Everybody, it's Ron at Becoming Enlightened Together. This is a little bit late as far as doing a reading, but I can only do it when I can do it. So I got a lot of things going on, so I just try to squeeze it in whenever I can, assuming I have the time to squeeze it in. So with that being said, um, and I'm trying to be consistent, but it's not always possible, like I said. So, anyways, the overall energy is that of Radho in the reverse. And just like the previous, 3 weeks or so, it's been very karmic-y. I know it's not a word, but that sums it up, I think. So what does Radho in the reverse actually mean? Well, in the upright, it means the blessed journey. So you can only imagine what it means. And when I say journey, I'm talking physically as well as spiritually. And even, shamanically, if you will. Going to the other worlds and so on. Okay? As well as traveling to and fro here in this one. But in the reverse, it talks about delays, unexpected, unwanted traveling, upsets of plans, delays, getting lost, being in a state of crises, some form of rigidity or stasis, injustice and irrationality, disruptions, dislocations, um, demotion in a job perhaps, or even losing your job. It talks about delusions, and unfortunately the possibility of death. And this is a theme that we've talked about a little here, a little there, but it's really been coming strong the last month or so, a month or two actually. Um, I don't know what to say about that. This could refer, as I've stated, and it could be both actually, a spiritual death and rebirth. Being born again is, no different in a sense in the Nordic system as it is in the Christian system. In a sense, before you can be born again, first off you have to throw off the old or die to yourself, so to speak, and then the new can come in. You have to make room for the new. All right, so that's the overall energy for the week, and the energy for today that we pulled on Sunday is that of Ewas, and Ewas also is in the reverse in this case. Now, typically, Ewas is used for magical endeavors, trance work, things like that. So again, we're seeing kind of a theme there in terms of traveling shamanically or spiritually, if you will. Some of you may do deep meditations of various types. Perhaps some of you are doing, other things. Maybe you're into, hallucinogens. Um, there's a multitude of possibilities in regards to, journeying. I typically do it all natural, so to speak, but I'm not opposed, and I've done some very, very deep ones actually while being, stoned. I don't mean by, drinking. I don't do alcohol anymore at all, but because it puts down all your inhibitions and it opens you up more so to, the energy as a whole. And if you're already aligned, you've already cleansed yourself of all the negative aspects, and you're protecting yourself at the same time, you'd be, amazed sometimes, I think, what you can actually see in those times. But you can overdo it like anything else, so remember now, balance is always the key. So, Ewas talks about long journeys, sudden, unexpected changes, bad timing, maybe craved changes. Maybe you're getting tired of the same old rut. So, maybe you're experiencing a sense of restlessness, feeling confined in a space. Um, you're also feeling a form of mistrust, disharmony, and maybe even betrayal at some level. Now, of course, this is the energy that we pulled for today. On Sunday, the energy that I have at this point is that of Lagos. So this is the present energy, and Lagos is actually in the upright. That's good. Now, Lagos speaks about things concerning water, rivers, lakes, streams, the ocean, the flow of water, leaks, stoppages, things of that nature. And as I always remind you, in terms of any form of divination, water is also associated with human emotions, good and bad. Okay, and we see that here. It's about intuitive endeavors or creativity, that spark, that you know, that light bulb going off, so to speak. So what we see here is basically dreams, interpreting dreams, and it's probably a good idea for people. I don't do it very often, but journaling is a very positive approach to doing this. I have been known to do that in time. Sometimes I'll even write it down in the midst of one of my readings and so on, and see how these things all come together. Um, and I've been quite astonished, at times. But it also talks about psychic abilities, those things which are hidden, occult, or the occult abilities, um, things that deal with psychic matters on any level, fantasies, mysteries, things that are hidden, the underworld, for example, occult abilities. It talks about success in travel and acquisition. So, I mean, it's a very positive room. It talks about life energy. It talks about organic growth. So, again, not only is it dealing with your intuitive abilities, opening up that third eye, and utilizing it, practicing these gifts, and you can develop them. And oftentimes, in order to develop your third eye, your pineal and pituitary glands have to be more or less cleansed to some degree. And this is one of the main reasons perhaps, that they put, fluoride in water in about 80% of American water supplies, because it has a tendency to calcify the pineal gland. But it's something that's well known by the elite. I mean, you can see a statue of a pineal gland in front of the Vatican. You can see it. I mean, it's literally represented, especially in hermetic and occultic works and stuff like that. And if you're very, very intuitive and diligent in research, and you're researching, one form of dogma or another, religious texts, you will also find it alluded to in many of those texts. So, you can develop it, but you got to, like I said, decalcify your pineal gland, and then you have to practice these techniques, and you can practice them while you're decalcifying. Okay, and there's other things you can do to help in that endeavor. Go ahead and just look it up on Google or something like that. And there's plenty of different websites in which they can help guide you on all the different procedural concepts and things like that, give you some ideas. Alright, so now the obstacles and challenges, we got Berkana, and Berkana is actually in the upright. Now, Berkana is the Birch goddess's rune. Her name, or one of her names, is Birchta. And as I said just a second ago, she's the birch goddess. So she's, again, likened to like Mother Nature in a sense. Takes care of the flora, the fauna, the animals, the young, women when they pass over to the next life. So you have a lot of that energy. Now, it also talks about purity, birth, fertility, mental, physical, spiritual growth, liberation, regeneration. Now, the only reason that these would be in the obstacles and challenges, because one of two things, actually. Somebody's already made their mind up that they are going to go through this transformation despite everything that they had previously chosen to do and partake in, or somebody is fighting it. They know it's the right thing to do, but fail to put the effort in to make these changes. So it can be an obstacle or a challenge if you have either started this endeavor or you have, refused to take those steps or put minimal energy into, that endeavor. And it's a very worthwhile endeavor, I might add. Okay, we're here to, become the best versions of ourselves. Okay, and we are lied to from the moment we are born in this world about literally everything. And I mean that literally because I literally have been researching for the last almost 40 years now. And like I said, almost in every venue that you can imagine, every level in academia and all these things. That doesn't mean every single word that they talk to you about or give to you or say to you or want you to believe is a lie. But they give you enough falsehoods that it could lead you down a very, very dangerous path on many of these, like I said, subjects that I'm referring to, politically, economically, religiously, you name it. Anything that has any kind of control or power over people, I guarantee you it has been infiltrated, influenced, and up till very recently completely taken over by, some very nefarious energies or forces, if you will. People that look like you and I, they smile a lot, they may even be charismatic, but behind the scenes, they are doing some very, very dark things. Things that would literally, well, not like anything that you can even imagine. I mean, the movies would not do it justice because we're talking reality here, and it's far worse than any movie. Okay? But you'll have to come to those determinations through your own research. Now, in terms of our help and advice, another thing about obstacles and challenges with Berkana, by the way, is that of a love affair and the arousal of desire. Now, again, in the midst of making these changes, escaping whatever turmoil or possibly third-party situation that you might find yourself in, or possibly, there's a multitude of possibilities actually that you might be in this time, or the karmics themselves might be in. Like I said last week or the week before, there is a lot of evidence that seems to point to the fact that there is at least, in our lives, one or more of these karmic individuals are actually having a change of heart, and they're starting to do their work, as we talked about here, a couple of runes back, in terms of actually putting the effort forward, making the changes that are necessary, abstaining from the things that are very, detrimental to our overall health, spiritually, physically, psychologically, and, cleaning up our act. Let me see. So, help and advice is Fehu, and Fehu also is a goddess's rune. This is the goddess Freya. It's also been associated in some cases with the goddess Frigg, the wife of mighty Odin and everything else. Freya is a god of beauty and war and many other things. They all are actually. So, but in the reverse, and ordinarily, Fehu, first off, is about abundance and productivity and things of that nature. But in the reverse, it talks about disappointments, and it talks about greed and loss. It talks about financial issues and arguments, losing of property or possessions. It talks about the possibility of losing your self-esteem, perhaps burnout and atrophy in somebody's life, discord and cowardice, even stupidity and dullness. Talks about poverty, slavery, and bondage. Okay, so now how is that help and advice? Well, when we're looking at these negative attributes and so on, this is the energy that some people are actually in at this point. Okay, and when we look at our future outcome, which is the next one I'm going to show you in a second, we see that there is a struggle that leads to success, or if you will, the finish line, light at the end of the tunnel kind of a thing. But let's finish this up first. So we want to get to the end of this race as quickly as we can, but we should really try to savor the moment, each moment. There's a book that's called The Power of Now, I think it is, or Eckhart Tolle. I read it a long time ago, and it was a very good book. His first book, his first endeavor, and it was very, very well done, I thought. So it opened my mind up to a few other things that I felt I already had a good grasp of, but turns out, I had to reevaluate and reshape, my overall picture, if you will, of a certain, subject matter and everything else. And it deals with the concept of, our place in this universe, God, what that means, that, this whole thing in terms of the multiplicity of dimensions happening simultaneously, which is in unison with what they're finding out in quantum physics these days. And they've known about it for thousands of years. Nachmanides wrote about it, almost 2,000 years ago. He based his assumptions upon the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah. So, and there's other, writings that tend to, through dogma, like the Vedas, and, even some mentions in terms of the Mahabharata and Hindu belief systems. We can find a lot of these elements that I'm talking about, these advanced ways of thinking and understanding the nature of our universe in these very ancient texts. They were not the primitives that they want us to believe that they were. I really would like to talk about that at some point and go into it. It's fascinating when you look at, the Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze, and then the Iron Age in Western belief system versus, the 4 yugas, if you will, of the Hindu belief system. And it looks like, if you will, our creation, our abilities, and everything else did not increase with time. It's actually happening the opposite way. And the Hindus believe that we are currently in the last cycle before the end, Armageddon and everything else. And even Christianity says the same thing. We're headed towards Armageddon, if you will, or, to those final battles and, Christ's return and everything else. Even though those may be metaphorical things, I believe the battles will be real. And they're already happening, for God's sakes. We're fighting basically for Israel right now. So, and we are fighting Iran. So China's involved, Russia's involved. You're talking about potentially it could literally happen any moment. So, but we see these thoughts echoed in these ancient belief systems, and we're living a lot of these, earlier spoken on periods of time. Okay, so the future outcome is that of now this looks like a cross with the horizontal beam slightly canted upright, and it is also in the upright in this particular case. So the future talks about, as most of the runes in the second group, family or Aya, do, it gives you the negative and then the positive aspects of these things. So what it talks about, even in the upright, is someone's needs and necessities, stress. It talks about delays and obstacles. It talks about confusion and distress and conflict. But then it talks about resistance, which leads to strength. Very similarly, like I always, or most of the time, I bring up, in reference to, having a cut that heals. You get a scar, and that scar tissue is far harder to harm a second time. Okay, and that's exactly what this is referring to in regards to the innovation, self-reliance, the power to overcome conflict and endurance, determination, recognition of one's own fate, and major self-initiated changes, as well as facing your fears. So we can see how some of the negative aspects of what we saw here, as far as our obstacles and challenges, and our help and advice, are bringing us to a closure. So it may get rocky. We know that already. If you've been paying attention to your own life, you know you're going to have peaks and you're going to have valleys, ups and downs, very good days and some not so good days and things of that nature. So it's a natural phenomenon. And we, in terms of our spiritual journey, are coming to an end, as we've been talking about now for almost a year. All I can say is I've, especially over the last couple of years in a row, specifically, have gone through one major obstacle after the next. And I know that there's other people out there that are, tuning into this, who are going through many of the same things. Maybe not exactly the same things, but in terms of the intensity and the level of sacrifice and the level of extreme discipline necessary to overcome some of these obstacles at times, and trust in where you're being led, where this is all going to work towards in the end, even though it doesn't make any sense why you're going through it. And I have those days even now, even still to this day, where it's like, what lesson am I to ascertain from this particular situation? Is there something that I can learn from this? Or am I, through this particular act, helping somebody else learn, for example? I mean, there's a multitude of ways that, some of these things that we classify as being not so positive, why they may be in our lives, allowing us to experience and by our actions, learning something and becoming stronger, as these runes that I just read allude to. And keep in mind, these runes are not just symbols etched on wood or metal or on your person or whatever the case may be, or written down on a piece of paper. They are more than that. They embody the way that the universe itself actually works, or that's the way that they believe. These runes have very deep meanings, and they were used for, magical and divination type of workings long before they were incorporated into an alphabet. So, and again, we found things that are almost 2,000 years old with runes on them. But the problem is that a lot of the things that were etched with runes are on materials that have a tendency to deteriorate after time, whether it's bone or wood or even some of the metal implements and weapons. I mean, they rust and they have a tendency to, also fall apart with enough time. But they have found items that are, like I said, close to 2,000 years old. 50 AD, I believe they found a brooch, and a comb or something like that, and on it, in runes, what's the word? Comb, or maybe the name of the person who owned that particular implement, or whatever the case may be. But and that implies, of course, that runes are far older than that 50 AD item that has been dated by archaeologists and so on. So, um, and we find symbols that are very similar, etched on in caves and things of that nature, or on rocks and so on, even in places in the Americas in some places. So, I mean, history, like I said, is not what they've told us it was, and it's up to us to try to figure this out and put the puzzle together. So, but I could definitely get off into 100 different tangents just on these subjects I brought up, and I don't want to do that during the readings. Although I am going to perhaps make another website or something like that where I talk about these other things as well, instead of just doing daily readings. But that's pretty much it. So we have, very, very good energy that is being, provided, and that we can embody. And it tells us that even though these things are going to happen in our lives, that there is going to definitely be light at the end of the tunnel. And I encourage you, I know that the timeline is different for everybody. And I mean, just taking those little baby steps, it just seems almost unbearably slow at times, with what you end up having to go through and sometimes sacrifice to finally get over the finish line. But I encourage you to stay steadfast in your conviction, continue being disciplined. Think of yourself maybe as a soldier in a sense. You're training yourself to become, I guess you could say, the harbinger of all that is right and truthful and good and everything else. And you look at the scriptures again, whether you're talking about Christianity or again Hinduism or whatever, the East or the West. That's why I always pick those two extremes. I can't just talk about the Norse and this and that. You'll find the same things there too, by the way. We see the war, the dualistic, if you will, battle that's going on, and you see it in the occult too, by the way. I've got the books. If you look at it, you can see the occult and esoteric and hermetic works. You have exoteric, which are your dogma, and then you have esoteric, which are the less known and sometimes hidden works. Okay, and hermetic works, from those like Oath, ancient Egypt and things of that nature. This is where we find so much of the ancient, if you will, they're far greater than we want to give them credit for, knowledge of the workings of the universe, multiple dimensions, and all of these types of things. When you read some of the Vedas, they even talk about flying aircraft and everything else in great detail. They go over advanced physics. They talk about things that we're just now starting to catch up with, including a very well described weapon that sounds very similarly to nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. All of these things are listed very, very detailed, within the Vedas, and Mahabharata, I should say, but the Vedas as well. They describe the Vimanas, the flying ships. Some were only used for traveling, within our particular, if you will, around the Earth, if you will, very quickly, and others were meant to be entire, like, flying cities, if you will, that could travel across the cosmos. And it's all well described. Okay. And we see similar things if you break it down. And right now I'm reading again the complete apocryphal works. It's about 700 pages, and it's got books such as the book of course, Enoch. And there's 3 books of Enoch, by the way, not just one. and the Book of Giants, Book of Jubilee, and of course then you also have the Gnostic Gospels. I've read the Bible multiple times, so I'm filling all the gaps in terms of Western beliefs, and really trying to get a grasp on it. Just like I look at the dark side as well. I don't practice the dark side, but I need to know what it is that they think, what they feel, what they go through, or the procedures that they utilize, in order to do certain things. I believe in balance. I don't believe I'm putting anything out there that I wouldn't want to be put upon myself. I do believe in the golden rule, and I see that also, as I've stated many times, found in every one of the universal religious systems that we have out there today. So, I'm saying that we can find truth, but unless you search for it like you would for buried treasure, well, you're not going to find it, because you're not going to get it from CNN, ABC, PBS, Fox, or any other news agency. That's a whole nother story. Again, they were bought in 1915 in the United States of America, and it's in the 1917 Congressional Record, 64th Congressional Record, and page almost 2,000 or something. That's how much they just fucking politicians. All they do is yammer, yammer, yammer. They say things that sound so great, but they never do anything, In fact, they usually do exactly the opposite. But they knew that J.P. Morgan and his ilk bought up the largest news agencies in this country at that time period. And that's exactly the same time period where 1913, when things such as the Federal Reserve, which is neither, it's an international banking cartel that sells our money back to us, where Congress is supposed to have that power and authority, they willingly gave it to international banking cartel. So you think you're free here? Trust me, you are not. And the evidence is literally everywhere. But you have to know where you're looking, and you have to be willing to accept the truth. Okay? And I use their own words against them. I mean, you're talking about an actual document that is a congressional document, and you're going to find that in Senate documents, freedom of information, disclosure agreements, and documents. You can find it in the patents. You can find, in the latest scientific journals and stuff like that. You can see so many things that are just not what you're being taught to believe, or told, expected to accept blindly as truth. Don't accept anything anybody says. Not me, not anybody, until you yourself have proven it to be true or false. And you're going to find that most of the time that's where it's going to end up being false. But be a soldier of truth, okay? Because that's, in essence, and to try to sum up what we're doing here, that's one of the things that is at the pinnacle, if you will, of the pyramid, as far as what we're here to do. To find truth, to be truth. And as I started to say, Christ, Krishna, all of the great religious, leaders, if you will, or the founders. Christ wasn't Christian. Krishna, wasn't Hindu per se or anything of those. They made religions around the amazing lives that these amazing people have lived. And yes, they were more, perhaps, than just regular human beings. They considered themselves, either, like Christ would say, the Son of God or God himself in some ways. They are one and the same. So, and that's a complicated subject. It is. But we see the Trinity again in Norse belief. We see it in Celtic belief. We see it, of course, in Christianity. We see it everywhere. Okay? So there is more that we have in common if you get away from all the cultural, I guess you can say, freaking wrappings and stuff that they put into the life and the lessons that these great people have left behind for us. So Anyway, I know I'm preaching. I apologize. I didn't plan to do that, but sometimes I just feel compelled and I just go with my gut. It's already been 35 minutes, so I'm going to leave it there. And as always, I wish you guys the very best. Stay victorious out there. And, um, you know, I'll do another reading here probably. Well, I'll try to do one or two tomorrow as well. Okay. Till then, you guys take care. I'll see you then. Bye.